On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human being to set foot on the lunar surface. Or did he? For over 5 decades, millions of people have questioned whether the Apollo moon landings actually happened. What started as whispers in the shadows has grown into one of the most persistent conspiracy theories of our time. But here's what most people don't know about this debate. The evidence that conspiracy theorists point to isn't just random speculation. There are specific, technical claims that have convinced intelligent people across the globe that something doesn't add up. From allegedly impossible physics to suspicious photographic evidence, the rabbit hole goes deeper than you might expect. And the more you dig into their arguments, the more questions start emerging. But before we dive into the controversy, let me be clear about what we're dealing with here, about some grainy footage or a few suspicious photos. We're talking about an event that involved over 400,000 people, cost $25 billion, and supposedly represents one of humanity's greatest achievements. If it was faked, it would be the most elaborate deception in human history. So what exactly are the conspiracy theorists claiming? And more importantly, how do their arguments hold up under scrutiny? By the end of this investigation, you'll have all the evidence you need to make up your own mind about what really happened in 1969. The conspiracy theory gained serious momentum in the 1970s, but it wasn't until 2001 that it exploded into mainstream consciousness. That's when a Fox television special called Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon?, aired to 15 million viewers. Suddenly, what had been fringe speculation became water-cooler conversation across America. The documentary presented several compelling arguments that made viewers question everything they thought they knew. First, there's the flag issue. In the footage, the American flag appears to be waving in the breeze. But wait, there's no atmosphere on the moon, which means no wind. So how is the flag moving? Then there's the lighting problem. Conspiracy theorists point out that in many of the lunar photographs, objects in shadow are clearly visible and well lit. If the sun was the only light source, these areas should be completely black. The fact that they're not suggests artificial lighting, like what you'd find on a movie set. The radiation argument is perhaps even more troubling. The Van Allen radiation belts surround Earth like invisible shields of deadly particles. According to some scientists, passing through these belts would have been lethal to the astronauts. Yet NASA claims they sailed right through without any protective shielding beyond their basic spacecraft. But the most disturbing evidence might be the missing technology. Think about this for a moment. In 1969, we supposedly had the technology to send humans 240,000 miles through space, land on another celestial body, and return safely. Yet today, over 50 years later, we still can't replicate that achievement. NASA openly admits they destroyed the plans and technology for the Saturn V rocket. Why would you destroy the blueprints for humanity's greatest accomplishment? The photographic evidence raises even more questions. Multiple images show what appear to be identical backgrounds, suggesting they were taken in the same location despite being labeled as different lunar sites. There are photographs with multiple light sources creating conflicting shadows. And perhaps most suspiciously, there are no stars visible in any of the lunar sky photographs. Here's where it gets really interesting though. The conspiracy theorists aren't just random internet trolls. Some of them are respected professionals with impressive credentials. Engineers, physicists, and even former NASA employees have gone on record questioning the official narrative. Bill Kaysing, often considered the father of moon landing conspiracy theories, wasn't just some random guy with wild ideas. He worked as a technical writer for Rocketdyne, the company that built the engines for the Apollo missions. His insider knowledge of the program led him to believe the technology simply wasn't advanced enough to accomplish what NASA claimed. Dr. James Van Allen, the scientist who discovered the radiation belts that bear his name, expressed doubts about whether the Apollo missions could have safely passed through them. Even Buzz Aldrin himself has made statements that conspiracy theorists interpret as admissions of deception. The political context makes the conspiracy theory even more compelling. The space race wasn't just about scientific achievement, it was about Cold War supremacy. The Soviet Union had beaten America to nearly every milestone in space exploration. They put the first satellite in orbit, the first animal in space, the first human in space, and the first spacecraft on the moon. America was losing badly in this propaganda war. Then suddenly, against all odds, America not only caught up, but achieved the ultimate prize. They landed on the moon, planted their flag, and declared victory just in time to meet President Kennedy's deadline of reaching the moon before the decade's end. The timing was almost too perfect. The pressure on NASA to deliver was immense. With the entire world watching and American credibility on the line, failure wasn't an option. This creates what conspiracy theorists call the perfect motive for deception. Why risk everything on an uncertain mission when you could guarantee success through Hollywood magic? And speaking of Hollywood, this is where the Stanley Kubrick connection comes into play. The legendary filmmaker had just released 2001, A Space Odyssey, in 1968, showcasing groundbreaking special effects that made space travel look incredibly realistic. Conspiracy theorists argue that Kubrick's techniques were so advanced that NASA recruited him to film the fake moon landings. The evidence they present is fascinating. Kubrick's attention to detail was obsessive, and his understanding of lighting and camera work was revolutionary. In 2001, he created convincing zero-gravity sequences and realistic spacecraft interiors. If anyone could pull off faking a moon landing, it would be Stanley Kubrick. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The very arguments that conspiracy theorists use to prove deception can actually be explained by legitimate science and technology. That waving flag, it's not waving at all. The flag appears to move because it's supported by a horizontal rod at the top, and the fabric holds its shape in the vacuum of space. When the astronauts plant the flagpole and twist it into the lunar soil, the motion creates the illusion of waving. The lighting issues have a surprisingly simple explanation. The lunar surface itself acts like a giant reflector, bouncing sunlight into shadowed areas. Additionally, light reflects off the astronauts' white spacesuits and the lunar module, creating multiple light sources that illuminate dark areas naturally. As for the radiation problem, NASA engineers actually did account for the Van Allen belts. The Apollo spacecraft passed through the thinnest parts of the belts at high speed, limiting radiation exposure. The astronauts received about the same amount of radiation as a chest X-ray. The spacecraft's aluminum hull provided sufficient protection for the brief transit time. The missing technology argument falls apart under closer examination. NASA didn't destroy the Saturn V plans out of secrecy. They stopped producing the rockets because they were incredibly expensive, and the political will for moon missions disappeared after Apollo 17. The institutional knowledge was lost as engineers retired and moved on to other projects. It's not that we can't go back to the moon, it's that we chose not to invest the enormous resources required, those suspicious photographs with identical backgrounds. The moon's horizon is much closer than Earth's due to its smaller size and lack of atmosphere. What appears to be the same background is actually the same distant mountains viewed from slightly different positions. The missing stars are explained by camera exposure settings optimized for the bright lunar surface, making the dim stars invisible in the photographs. Professional debunkers have systematically addressed every major conspiracy claim with scientific explanations. The Mythbusters television show dedicated multiple episodes to testing conspiracy theories, demonstrating how each piece of supposed evidence has a rational explanation. But perhaps the most compelling evidence for the moon landings is something conspiracy theorists rarely mention. The Soviet Union never disputed them. At the height of the Cold War, The Soviets were monitoring every aspect of the Apollo missions with advanced tracking equipment. If there had been any indication of deception, they would have exposed it immediately. Instead, Soviet scientists congratulated NASA on their achievement. Independent verification exists from multiple countries. Japan's Selene probe, India's Chandrayaan-1, and China's Chang'e missions have all photographed evidence of Apollo landing sites, including equipment left behind by the astronauts. The retroreflectors placed on the lunar surface by Apollo crews are still used today by observatories worldwide to measure the distance between Earth and the Moon with laser ranging experiments. These mirrors couldn't have been placed by robotic missions of that era. Yet despite overwhelming scientific evidence supporting the moon landings, polls consistently show that a significant percentage of people still believe they were faked. In some demographics, that number reaches as high as 20%. The conspiracy theory has become so embedded in popular culture that it's spawned countless books, documentaries, and websites dedicated to proving NASA's deception. Human psychology plays a crucial role in why these theories persist. The moon landings represent such an extraordinary achievement that they almost seem too incredible to be real. So where does this leave us? After diving deep into both sides of this decades-old debate, we've seen compelling arguments from conspiracy theorists and equally compelling rebuttals from scientists and engineers. The evidence for the moon landings is overwhelming when examined through the lens of physics, technology, and independent verification from multiple countries, including America's Cold War enemies. But here's what's really fascinating about this whole controversy. The fact that millions of people can look at the same evidence and reach completely different conclusions tells us something profound about human nature itself. We're pattern-seeking creatures who sometimes find patterns that aren't really there, especially when the truth seems almost too extraordinary to believe. The Apollo moon landings represent one of humanity's greatest achievements, a moment when we literally reached for the stars and succeeded. Whether you believe they happened or not, the questions raised by conspiracy theorists have actually led to better science communication and more rigorous documentation of extraordinary claims. What's your take on all this evidence we've explored today? Have you changed your mind about what happened in 1969, or do you still have lingering doubts? The beauty of investigating these kinds of mysteries is that the journey toward truth often teaches us more about ourselves than the destination itself. And that might be the most valuable discovery of all.